I wish to speak about the evolution of modern technology and how it helped create this new movement of transhumanism. So I will shortly talk about this. Then I will summarize the main arguments of the proponents and especially the opponents of transhumanism. And then I will conclude with a question and a short reflection on the question of whether or not there can be a healthy Christian version of transhumanism. So what exactly is transhumanism, and how did we get here? As you can see, in the past about 200 years, the human society has advanced immensely by means of technology. We have behind us what many would call industrial revolutions that really revolutionized our understanding of the world, and the technology that came out of these industrial revolutions helped us immensely to live more comfortable and safe lives. The first industrial revolution used water and steam power to mechanize production. The second one relied on electric power to create mass production, while the third used electronics and information technology to automate production. But it is really the fourth industrial revolution that is the most important one and the most recent one. It is building on the third, the digital revolution, that has been occurring since the middle of the last century. And it is characterized by a fusion of three main areas of technology. Basically, advances in information technologies and artificial intelligence, advances in the biological sciences, including genetics and reproductive technologies and so on, advances in the physical sciences, nanotechnologies, quantum mechanics. And these advances create what we may call breathtaking synergies that we now recognize as the fourth industrial revolution. And it is due to these advancements that we can speak seriously about transhumanism, even though this word came basically many decades ago. It is not a term that was coined in the past decade, but it is only with these latest advancements in technology that we can speak realistically about achieving its goals. So let's look at the definition and goals of transhumanism. First of all, let me introduce the founding fathers of this intellectual movement, because it's more of a philosophical movement than a scientific movement, even though there are scientists who subscribe to it. But it's really a philosophical vision of the world. So first of all, the biologist Julian Huxley, he is generally regarded as the founder of transhumanism with his work in 1957. Then Max More, this is a more recent fellow, with his book Principles of Extropy from 1990. He's the founder of Extropy Institute. Then we have philosopher Nick Bostrom and David Pearce, who founded the World Transhumanist Association in 1998. It was then renamed, and now it is known as Humanity Plus. And then we have James Hughes, the American sociologist and bioethicist, who is also the former executive director of the World Transhumanist Association. And here are the pictures of the men that I mentioned. So as I indicated before, transhumanism is really a class of philosophies that seek to guide us towards a post-human condition. Transhumanism shares many elements of humanism, including respect for reason and science and so on, but it differs from humanism in recognizing and anticipating the radical alterations in the nature and possibilities of human lives resulting from various sciences and technologies. And this is from Max More. And he goes on, and this is a little frequent questions and answers from their website, and this is the way they define themselves. So let me just quote a few paragraphs. It is the intellectual and cultural movement, they say, that affirms the possibility and desirability of fundamentally improving the human condition through applied reason, especially by developing and making widely available technologies to eliminate aging and to greatly enhance human intellectual, physical, and psychological capacities. Some transhumanists tend to see humanity as a mere link in the evolutionary chain of consciousness, and humanity's value thus comes from its being a source of potential to create or to prepare the way for new orders of sentient beings, which takes us beyond the classical transhumanism to post-humanism. So some say that our meaning comes from our being part of this evolutionary process, and our main goal is to prepare the way for this evolution to progress as fast as possible to something higher, better, more noble than humans. Transhumanists wish to study the ramifications, promises, but also potential dangers of these technologies. And they say that through a process of human-directed evolution, humans can and should enhance themselves beyond what is naturally human, including a radical extension of healthy human life. We can basically say that there is a yearning for immortality interwoven in the transhumanist goals and dreams. And they propose 3 new civil liberties to be included in a wider philosophical and political discourse even. And this is the cognitive liberty, which means that every human being should be able to enhance his cognitive abilities as much as possible, the way they want. Morphological freedom, which means that you can adjust your bodies in any shape and form as you see fit. And then procreative liberty, which means that you can design your offsprings the way you want. And this should be basically written in new constitutions, these new liberties. It's not a unified current of thought. This is very important to know. There are various currents in transhumanism, some of which actually are a bit at odds with each other. So extropianism is, I mentioned Thomas More as one proponent of this. It's basically we can say that all transhumanists are essentially extropian, in the sense that extropianism is the opposite to entropy. So extropy is an enhanced evolution, versus entropy is really the sort of dissolution or when you have more complex structures and they fall apart into less complex structures. That's entropy, but extropy is the opposite of that. Yeah? Then you have immortalism, postgenderism, singularitarianism. They, for example, they try to achieve, produce artificial intelligence that would be on par with human intelligence or even surpass human intelligence, and so forth. So there are various currents. It's a very diverse movement. And this striving for immortality, this is not new to transhumanism. We would be unfair to blame them for this. Obviously, we have this idea in art, in philosophy, in human culture. I can show you 3 examples. The picture with the fountain of life comes from Lucas Cranach. That's a known painter from the 16th century. Then this is a fragment from Epos of Gilgamesh, which is the idea of the Epos is also the search for immortality. It's one of the main leading ideas. And then from the Chinese, mythology or culture, you see this white rabbit who is preparing an elixir of life. So you have it all over the world. It's not something that is new. But with the coming of new technologies, right now we can hope to expand human life, and we have already the ability to adjust it or to enhance certain abilities of humans. So for the first time in human history, this kind of dreams are becoming more realistic, even though we are not so far yet. So we can really ask this question whether victory of transhumanism is inevitable, and whether we can or should try to stop it. There is one other consideration that I would like to offer to you before I go on, and before I introduce a bit some of the ideas of transhumanists about their own goals and aspirations. Some people say that transhumanism has always been with us as a philosophy of life, because it basically marks human progress as such, human evolution and human progress. So when we had primitive people who started using tools, they evolved into something more based on using those tools. And so you might say that that's also an example of transhumanism, when now you had our human ancestors who were able to use stone tools or bronze tools or whatever, because it enhanced their lives and they maybe became a bit healthier and wealthier and so on. So some critics say that we invent this topic, this term, transhumanism, in an artificial way, and that we should not make a fuss about this, because this human evolution has been here all the time, and human progress is what makes us human. So why mention transhumanism as something new and dangerous? And I think it's something that we need to take into account, of course, and we need to be able to somehow distinguish this natural human evolution and progress from something that is expedited and from something that becomes, so to speak, unnatural. And we need to really talk about the ramifications of what it means for the human race. Okay, so let's hear a bit more from Max More, one of the leading founders of this movement. He explains his extropian evolutionary philosophy. He says that the extropian rejects the common culture of negativity, the focus on negatives, the defense of stagnation and tradition, and advocates a surging forward into a bright future. Extropian transhumanism embodies the extropic principle of dynamic optimism. Unlike faith's unquestioning belief in a superior realm to be bestowed upon us through divine agency, dynamic optimism of extropians is an internally generated motivation for progress. The extropian philosophy does not look outside us to a superior alien force for inspiration. Instead, it looks inside us and beyond us, projecting forward to a brilliant vision of our future. Our goal is not God, says More. It is the continuation of the process of improvement and transformation of ourselves into ever higher forms. We will outgrow our current interests, bodies, minds, and forms of social organization. And this process of expansion and transcendence, says More, is the fountainhead of meaningfulness. And then he goes even further when he quotes Nietzsche, and he basically says, we should follow up on Nietzsche's dream of, creating an Übermensch, someone who is more than a mere fragile human, and offers the idea that extropian transhumanism offers an optimistic, vital, and dynamic philosophy of life. We behold a life of unlimited growth, possibility, with excitement and joy. He says that transhumanists seek to avoid all limits to life, intelligence, freedom, knowledge, and happiness. Science, technology, and reason must be harnessed to our extropic values to abolish the greatest evil, which is death. So all of this is from More. And here you can see his attack on religion, and this is where it becomes even more polemic, and where it becomes basically an invitation for us to give an answer. He says, God was a primitive notion, invented by primitive people only just beginning to step out of ignorance and unconsciousness. God was an oppressive concept, a more powerful being than we, but he was made in the image of our crude self-conceptions. That's how we projected God, based on our crude self-conceptions. Our own process of endless expansion into higher forms should and will replace this religious idea, says More. As extropians pursuing and promoting transcendent expansion, we are the vanguard of evolution. Humanity is a temporary stage along the evolutionary pathway. No more gods, no more faith, no more timid holding back. Let us blast out of our old forms of ignorance, our weakness, and our mortality. The future is ours. So you can see the manifesto, which is quite polemic and quite hostile to religion and to tradition, and basically to humanism as such. So we can ask whether conflict with religion, Christianity, is in fact inevitable, based on such proclamations and manifestos. And many say that yes, it is, and we need to be very, very critical of transhumanism. So what follows now, I will offer to you a summary of arguments that I found that criticize transhumanism as a philosophical and ideational movement. So first of all, transhumanism is humanity's proud and to a large extent utopian attempt at attaining paradise by its own wisdom and efforts. It is yet another Tower of Babel that will potentially crush its builders. It confuses the meaning of perfection with strength, intellectual capacity, vitality, or youthfulness. I think this is quite important because, we believe that we will be happy if we become more perfect, more stronger, But is that really so? Is perfection really tied to strength, intellectual capacity, vitality, youthfulness, longevity of life? That's really up for debate, right? And we would argue that no, in fact it is not. It underestimates the social, economic, and environmental implications ensuing the implementation of its goals. It also debases the human body into a mere instrument or as something we need to be free of, something we need to free our minds from, as a kind of techno-Gnosticism. And I know Professor Žalec will speak more about techno-Gnosticism. With the transhumanist movement, one sees the Gnostic strain reasserting itself in the quest to transcend the degenerate body, which is held in contempt. Advocates for enhancement technology exhibit disdain for the current status of the physical body. There is an abhorrence of its limitations that nature has placed upon the species, as if the natural limits of our bodies necessarily made us unhappy, and we need to get rid of them to become happy and more fulfilled. The insufficiencies of height, strength, vision, hearing, longevity, and cognition are seen as roadblocks to happiness and perpetual fulfillment. Like the earlier Gnostics, knowledge and insight are the keys to overcome the deficiencies of the physical. So they too emphasize knowledge. With the accumulation of research in genetic engineering, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and so on, we are able to overwhelm the frailty and deficiency inherent in the human condition. The ability to repair, replace, or enhance the various biological systems in the body allows one to overcome the limits of finitude. But again, it doesn't follow logically that we can become more happy with this. Because a logical outcome of this is the prospect of a multi-tiered view of humanity. This means that we will create a human society that will be ruled by these superhumans who have the means to enhance themselves, and the majority of the population remains weak and fragile and basically at the mercy of these superhumans. The vast majority, so that's the capability to move the mind into the machine, mind uploading, will mark the attainment of the final goal of the Gnostics, that of the overcoming of the body and achieving some kind of a cyber nirvana. So these are some summary or some examples of the critical voices, critical arguments against transhumanism that I think need to be taken seriously, and they need to be explored more. And I invite us to explore these as we progress, as we continue to work on this. However, there are people, even on the religious side, even among Christians, Christian theologians, who defend transhumanism and its potential. Not that kind of transhumanism that is anti-religious, but the kind of transhumanism, they say, that can be seen as a legitimate outcome of human endeavor to be faithful co-creators with God of this world. So, for example, Ted Peters, he's a famous theologian, he argues that our status of God's stewards and co-creators requires us to use all knowledge and possible technologies, including genetic engineering and advanced biotechnologies, to improve human biology and to provide enhancements that would then be conducive to our status and responsibilities as stewards of creation and as God's partners in creatio continua, as those who bear God's image. He says that why should you reject these technologies if they can make you more faithful in your own responsibilities? And there are several actually Christian transhumanist associations, but this is the one that I want to introduce to you is based in the United States, and this is from their website. This is their motto: using science and technology to participate in the work of God, to cultivate life and renew creation. So basically these Christian theologies are theologians, and these associations, they are not naive. They see the dangers of transhumanism and its goals, but they also say we should not be like the medieval church and shy away from scientific advancements, because then later on history will prove that we were wrong, and maybe we will be sorry. So they say, let's look for some ways how to combine the guiding Christian principles that will anchor us in our humanity, that will help reminding us who we are as humans created in the image of God. So that's on one side. They say we can do this, and if we are guided by these principles, we can then carefully venture into the world of transhumanism using these new technologies. But we must never forget about these guiding principles that anchor us morally, spiritually. Yeah? So that's basically their methodology as to how to approach this problem. And so one example how this association is trying to achieve just that, is the following. So, and they have these 5 guiding principles which they want to abide by, and they say if we abide by these principles, we can be active in using these new technologies. So first of all, they say we believe that God's mission involves the transformation and renewal of creation, which includes our humanity, our biological constituency. Then they say we seek growth and progress along with every dimension of our humanity. We recognize science and technology as tangible expressions of our God-given impulse to explore and discover, and as our natural outgrowth of being created in the image of God. And we are guided by Jesus' greatest commands. So while doing this, we will use technology because it is a natural outgrowth of us being created in God's image. But as we do it, we are guided by Jesus' greatest commands to love the Lord your God with all your heart and so on, and the neighbor as yourself. So that's the principle, guiding principle. And finally they conclude, we believe that the intentional use of technology coupled with following Christ will empower us to become more human across the scope of what it means to be creatures in the image of God. So the big questions that remain before us are the following. How far does our mandate to till and keep God's garden, God's good creation, how far does this mandate go? Technologically speaking, scientifically speaking, how far can we meddle with the human genome, for example, so that we can still say that we remain faithful to this command of God? How can we pursue the optimistic vision of Christian transhumanists to become more human across the scope of what it means to be creatures in the image of God by our intentional use of technology and by following Christ? These are the big questions that I hope we can explore together. I'm not here at this stage. I have some initial ideas that I can share with you during our discussions, I think. But at this point, I will not give you further slides or further answers to this, because I look forward to what you have to say, obviously. But my presentation was meant to sort of set the stage, to entice all of us to think about these complex questions. So it's really a starting impulse. And now I hope that we can get deeper into concrete problems. So thank you for your attention, and I invite you to ask questions. Yes, please.
You mentioned about that association of Christian transhumanists. They have a publication or journal or something. They publish books or regarding their ideas how to relate Christianity, theology, and transhumanism.
As far as I know, this is a new endeavor. So they publish things online. They spread their ideas online. They have a few pamphlets, booklets that are in PDF forms, but as far as I know, these people don't publish any journal. But there might be other groups. I will have to explore that. I'm not quite sure.
They are theologians from which part?
These are Protestant theologians. Yeah, thank you for asking.
It's good to know that, because I didn't know.
Yeah.
Christian association. Thank you.
Yes.
I have one question regarding the religious defenders of transhumanism, like Ted Peters and so on. But very simple question. Why they call themselves transhumanists? Because you said very clearly at the end of your paper that they believe that we can use technology to become more human. And more human is not transhuman.
Yeah.
And this is question. Of course, Christianity in a sense is transhumanism, but we can achieve transhuman condition only in heavens. But these secular transhumanists, they believe already on the earth, which is already in conflict. So why I agree with everything. We should not be too apocalyptic, this is a lack of trust in God and so on. It's a sin of mistrust. And we should use, like Apostle Paul said, test everything and use what is beneficial. Result in the Bible and so on. I agree with everything they say, but why they call transhumanists? They are not transhumanists. They are humanists who said we can use technology to improve, to become better humans. So this is just simple.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I think there is an inner tension there. There is contradiction, and also it's questionable whether we should try to become something more than human, transhuman, or whether we should rather try to recover our humanity, full humanity, because the incarnated Logos did not become transhuman. So you are right, in heaven, after our bodies are resurrected, we can talk about a transhuman condition. Yeah, but okay, we don't, it's mystery to us. Yeah, there's not much we can say. But the incarnated Logos became human, a true human. He was not a transhuman. Jesus was actually the new Adam, or the way Adam was supposed to be in the first place. So looking at Jesus, you look at a true man, finally, a true human being, right? So instead of, and yet he was a man who wept, who was susceptible to diseases, aging, he has his limitations, right? And yet he was a full human, the way the Creator wanted humans to be, right? So instead of achieving some difficult to define transhuman goal, why not look at what it really means to be human deeply, and rather trying to achieve this goal?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, these are the questions we theologians want to propose and want to ask very, very seriously, because maybe some of the goals of transhumanism are completely misguided and will lead us off the road to happiness, not on the road to happiness.
Perhaps I can continue. Professor, you said that it's simple question, but it's very deep question and very complicated, because what is question what is transhumanism, and in connection what is humanism, but we are not able to provide some statement about these definitions, and perhaps we can see it also in this basic declaration of human law. In the beginning, in the introduction, there is mentioned that it is all about human, and it was based on human dignity. But nobody defined what is human dignity, and we are in circle, yes. And but this question is really important in this context.
If I may share with you just this one slide, and because this goes back to these two questions, also from Professor Danzak. And so this is one type of an answer. Something I wish to explore further as my response to these transhumanist challenges, but it's not fully. I didn't want to originally share it, but as part of the discussion I think that we need to recover the idea that humans are essentially relational, personal relational beings, biopsychosocial beings that are born with what Charles Taylor calls intrinsic porosity. Yeah? Intrinsic porosity, which means that we are born in such a way that we are able to receive with trust the self-communication of others and also the transcendent other. And this process of receiving with trust the self-communication of the other actually makes us human. Yeah? Our emerging personhood can only emerge because others relate to me. So as a small child, I would not become an I, a self-aware subject, if my mother didn't embrace me, gave me her care, her love, and gave me her gift of language. Yeah? So within this warm embrace, yeah, within the basic condition of trust, and without this linguistic endowment, my I would not even emerge. I would not become fully self-aware. My human potential would not be realized. Yeah? So there is this relational dependency that defines us as human beings. This is something that I argue. And this relational dependency, with the help of some of these technologies, I argue that this dependency will be curtailed or maybe completely removed, and we become solipsistic, sort of isolated, independent, self-referential digital beings or something.
Depressive.
It's very depressive, isn't it?
No, for instance, Hartmut Rosa is a German sociologist, very philosophically educated. He aroused a lot of interest. He's a bestseller, Kickstarter, Germany and continental philosophy, also among scholars of religions, with his book Resonance. Resonance relationship with the world. And his thesis is that the origin of the growing number of depressive people in the developed countries of materialist well-being is that we are not in resonant relationship. The opposite is alienation. Alienation is where all the channels to the world, not just to the fellow human beings, but to the animals, also to the so-called inanimate things. This is a Bulgarian position, basically, I-flow relationship, is that we are alienated from the world. If you are alienated, your channels of relationship are dead, are blocked. You can be a member of your faculty team, but you are alienated. You can be officially a member of your family, but you are alienated. You can be a member of a culture, but you are alienated. And then you get sick. And this is proof also with the evidence. So one, this, what the transhumanists do is they totally neglect the human body. It's extreme transhumanism. And human body is relational organ. Such non-relational human bodies contradict the And what actually is the implications, consequence of this radical transhumanism, not pure transhumanism, I think just concentrate, is that we get the pathological, the society pathological world. And this is what you say. Because, for instance, Taylor, of course, Taylor is, and Hartmut Rosa made his dissertation on Charles Taylor, so we have this continuity. Rosa has written his dissertation in 1990 about philosophy of Charles Taylor. So Rosa is basically developed terrorists, of course.
Yeah.
Everything is yeah, just a little bit restorative.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting when you look at the statistics of suicides and depressions. You have suicidal people in Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, but proportionally not as many as in developed countries like Japan or Sweden, or the statistics are actually worse in developed societies where people live very comfortable lives, but very lonely lives. The epidemic of loneliness may be worse than the epidemic of COVID-19 or any other epidemic. In Great Britain, also in the UK, they say that they basically said we have an epidemic of old lonely of loneliness, which affects especially older people who are over 60, and they are simply lonely, and nobody wants them. They don't know how to enter into relationships anymore, and they have their house, but they sit there empty, in an empty house, and they get depressed, and then they call a special line, and they talk to a psychologist, and that's the solution.
And also there is another objection to the optimism of transhumanists. Of course, the average duration of life is plus 10 years in that case. But this is not due to the progress in medicine or in science. It's more on better hygienic conditions, then vaccination. Okay, this could be about medicine, better food. All these are main factors. But for instance, the degenerative disease or production of artificial heart and so on, they don't make progress. They are at the same point basically as 30 years ago. So this is also, it shows up that this optimism is exaggeration.
Perhaps the most weak thought in this context is unlimited growth. This sort of unlimited, we don't have our experience with unlimited, but these ultra transhumanists, they are continually speaking about this unlimited growth. Maybe perhaps it is the most weak point.
Yeah, it's, for instance, if you have a broader picture, for instance, I was involved in a project for transhumanism, and I was involved recently in a project about the human rights in economy, mostly with specialists for legal science. And the things converge, for instance, transhumanism, and the basic premise of that, for instance, neoconservative economy, which is that man is a creature of self-interest. And that means reduction of higher order needs to some egoistic picture, non-relational picture. And it fits totally good with, they are just the facets of the same coin. It's the same story, but on the economist level, on the cognitive and whatever it is, topological level, they fit, because basically it's utilitarianism, this vulgar utilitarianism that reduces human being to some very low level needs, and they think that we can totally fulfill these needs by enhancing our physical capabilities, our almost hardware, we can say. And this is the same story as the neoconservative economics, which is the main premise in the modern science of economy. I recently wrote an article and I quoted one of the most popular university textbook in USA for economics, 10th edition, in 2010 was 10th edition. And basic premise is this self-interest. And they explain it but not ground it. They expect you to accept this like an article of faith. This is our faith. That human being is a being of self-interest, this is our faith. They say, for instance, this beautiful article, they say, but this is not selfishness. But nobody is further explained what this is not selfishness. This is just an article of faith. And this is millions, maybe we could say, students of business and economy in USA and all over the world are educated and shaped by this ideology. And they are managers, they are leading the funeral, the money. So then you have this. And transhumanism is just, the brother or twin brother of this utilitarian economic idea, which